Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Washington Outsider. Today's topic, the dramatic events in Tunisia, are part of our series on geopolitics and human rights. My name is Irina Zuckerman. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider, and with us today, we have a special guest to discuss this topic, Manal Salmi, who is an international advisor on foreign policy on Middle East for the European Parliament. Manal, welcome back.
Thank you, Irina. Welcome back. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy and pleased to be with you today.
I am quite excited to discuss the turn of events. There's been a lot going on. The president froze the parliamentarian powers and immunity and relieved the prime minister of his duties. The Al Jazeera offices were shut down following mass demonstrations linked to the economy and the COVID-19 handling. But there is more to the story than just pandemic related excesses and inadequacies, which have been a problem all over the world. No one has handled the situation perfectly except maybe Taiwan, Singapore, and a couple of others. So, my question is, what's the real story here? What led to these events and why now?
Actually, as everybody has seen, there was manifestations, demonstrations among Tunisians. So they went into the streets on the 25th of July because they are seeking economic justice. They are seeking better conditions. After Arab Spring, for more than 10 years, Tunisians were seeking human rights, better conditions, economic and social justice, but also freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And that's why during this the beginning of this legislature, within 2 years, Tunisians witnessed with the new parliament a lot of conflicts, and unfortunately parliamentarians didn't defend the citizens' rights, didn't defend the citizens' demands of human rights, of equality, of justice, of freedom, of also getting job opportunities. And also this crisis becomes bigger and becomes deeper with the coronavirus and with the pandemic, because Tunisia was lately facing a huge humanitarian and health crisis with the coronavirus. A lot of people died. So I think after this coronavirus, people realize that education as well as health insurance, especially health and hospitals and everything, is going backwards. And they voted for people who didn't really realize their dreams of a better living conditions. So that's why they demonstrated against these, especially so many deputies in the parliament and in the majority held by the Islamists, because they believe that they didn't really represent their rights and their duties, but on the contrary, they really abused this confidence, this faith in them. And unfortunately, there are so many decisions made which are against freedom, against individual freedom. So the situation of freedom and human rights are getting backward, and that's why Tunisians found that going to the streets is the only solution to stop especially these conflicts which are taking place every day in the parliament.
We're in the 10th year anniversary of the Arab Spring. Ironically, the Arab Spring started in Tunisia and brought these types of people to power, not just there, but temporarily in Egypt, and we all know what happened and how that ended. We've seen the manifestations, the chaos that followed the Arab Spring in Syria, where there was a quite legitimate grievance against Assad, and we've seen attempts at Arab Spring like uprisings in Bahrain and elsewhere. And we have seen that throughout the world, whenever Islamists come to power, there are governance issues. So the question is why it took 10 years for people to realize that the Islamists are not going to give them what they want, that they rise on slogans and they rise on programs that may sound appealing, but afterwards there's corruption, mismanagement, and just poor governance in general. What was the final straw that and why is the situation different from Lebanon, where, for instance, Hezbollah, a different type of Islamist government, managed to entrench itself so deeply that getting rid of it is now a significant issue. What's the difference between the two situations?
I think every country is special, and every let's say nationality or every identity, Arab identity, is also particular. In the case of Tunisia, Tunisian people are very peaceful. They also I believe that all people in the Arab world are peaceful, but they don't like to go into conflicts, real conflicts. So they choose when the Arab Spring took place, it was a very peaceful demonstration. People went into the streets. It was also with lawyers, with journalists, with academics, a lot of intellectuals. Also, the role of intellectuals was very, very important in that stage. But later, I think that what happened is in 2014, when the new government was formed for the first time, it was a coalition between secular parties and Islamists. It was giving Islamists for the first time in the Arab world, and also in the history of Tunisia, giving them the opportunity to accede to power and the opportunity of democracy and being a part of this coalition. Even though I would like to specify here, even though secularists had the opportunity of getting Islamists out of the game, but they didn't do it because they said, let us give them a chance. They want to, they said that they are progressive. They said that they are liberal Muslims. They said that they are not against liberal values, that they defend the Arab Spring, they defend freedom, human rights. Let's give them a chance. Unfortunately, they didn't defend this human rights, these values, but they only want these values to be applied on themselves, but they don't apply it on the others. So there is no give and take in this equation of human rights. So at that stage, I think that, yes, it took a lot of time for Tunisians to realize that Islamists or the idea of having political Islam within the government is not really a good idea. We have to separate the government and the religion, and to be a secular country, which is something has to be written into the constitution. But unfortunately, it didn't take place, apart from so many other things: gender equality, freedom for LGBTI community, freedom also for minorities, equal rights and freedoms for minorities. So many things were not written in the constitution because still pending into the constitution. And the parliament at the very beginning, the Islamists said, okay, we are for gender equality, we are for the rights for everyone, for minorities. But at the end, there are only words. There are no actions. So I think that it took a long time for Tunisians to realize that there are no actions on the part of Islamists. But at least they have given them a chance to participate into the political scene.
What is the connection between Qatar and the Ennahda party? Because a few weeks before all of this happened, there was an incident with one of the Ennahda parliamentarians attacking a secular parliamentarian and physically slapping her over her investigation into corruption allegations linked to Qatar. What was that all about?
Yeah. One of the reasons people were fed up with the stories of the parliament is that, unfortunately, the parliament, which is normally the symbol of freedom, respect, of freedom, human rights, gender equality, becomes a battle in which we find people slapping each other, or people, let's say, swearing at each other. And the incident which is really let's say shameful is seeing a woman slapped and human rights violated inside the parliament, and was very shocking for Tunisians to see that. And of I mean Concerning the link with Qatar, of course, there is support, but actually now there are investigations, so they are trying to find out documents, especially concerning organizations which are, let's say, in relation to another party which supports the Muslim Brotherhood in Tunisia. Of course, we still wait for these investigations because this is the objective of the Article 80. The story is that a lot of parliamentarians, secular parliamentarians, have so many doubts, and they have sometimes evidence that another party is in relation with Qatar, and it finances the activities, and it also finances the elections, and that's why they had a lot of votes, actually.
Now, Ennahda is not the only Islamist party in North Africa. We have the same issue with the PJG, the governing party in Morocco.
Yeah.
What is the relationship between Ennahda and PJG, and do you suppose that similar issues affect both parties? What is there a difference? Because we're not seeing quite the same level of outrage over whatever issues in Morocco, but in Tunisia it led to the fall of the government. Essentially, is there a different management, or are they closely linked, or what's the story here?
Yes, of course. I believe that Muslim Brotherhood, it changes from one country to another, is different, and it's also it identifies with the identity of the people there. So Muslim Brotherhood in Tunisia, it tries to appeal to Tunisians by being more, let's say, secular, or trying to pretending to defend women's rights whatsoever. I believe that they have, of course, links, and they share the same vision. But of course, it's different because in Morocco, we have a royal, let's say, government. So we have royalty, and there is a respect to the king and to respect to the kingdom. And in Tunisia, we have a republican system. So the difference is that in Morocco, we have always this respect to the king and respect to the rules of the king. But in Tunisia, we have a constitutional system, and we have always to come back to the constitution. So it's very difficult. Even in Morocco, I don't think that it's easy in Morocco to separate. The Islamist government from the coalition, but it's also difficult in Tunisia unless there was the Article 80, and then we will see later what happens, because we are not here yet. So I believe that they share a lot of common interests, but they have they have different reactions regarding so many things. For instance, when Morocco decides I mean, to have peace deal with Israel. The PGD said that they don't share this I mean this view, but at the end they don't make a story. I mean, and on the contrary, in Tunisia, since this they have seen that leftists are against normalization with Israel. So the Islamists said, no, there is no way we normalize with Israel. So it's always trying to see what the population and following and also nurturing this sentiment in the population.
Mm-hmm. So we are seeing here also that Al Jazeera has gotten kicked out of their offices as a result of these events by the police. Is there, what is the official justification for leaving them? I know that Qataris have expressed a lot of outrage, but we also know that Al Jazeera has played a political rather than journalistic role in various uprisings and conflicts around the world. So what was their role in Tunisia in the past 10 years, and what caused them to be thrown out now?
I am for freedom of speech. I believe that we have always to respect the freedom of speech, even though we don't share the same values or the same views of any of these channels. But concerning Al Jazeera, it's been so many years after, especially after the Arab Spring, but really before. People in North Africa and in the Arab world have been really manipulated by Al Jazeera. And there is, unfortunately, there is a depiction of the West, of Europe, of liberal values, of universal values as something let's say really bad for the Ummah, for the Muslim people, and it's something dangerous against the identity, and also it raises a lot of hatred and hate speech against the West, America, Israel. So it's always putting the blame on the West and not letting people think by themselves and find out that maybe if there is something which is not working in our countries, because we have the responsibility to, I mean, to be good leaders, to be good politicians, etc. So it's always putting the blame on the West, and this is what Al Jazeera was doing, and other channels, and unfortunately, it really worked because it's always raising hatred against the West, against America, against France, against Europe, against Israel. So always playing on that and forgetting that there are other countries, maybe Arab countries, including Qatar, which are, I mean, manipulating these people because they want to have, let's say, the control of the area, of the MENA region.
And is there a political connection between Ennahda and Al Jazeera? Has there been some sort of a mutual understanding between them?
No, I think that they interview them, they give them a platform. So it's very important to have a platform. Yesterday, when they shut down Al Jazeera, they didn't want some politician to speak to Al Jazeera because they would like to see them as victims. So this is the interpretation of Al Jazeera is that Islamists are victims. So I believe that they have this platform to be depicted most of the time as victims, as people who are denied human rights, as people who are not respected, as people who are who lived so many times in exile in other countries and then came back to their home countries and then defend the revolution, which is not true because the revolution was done by people living in their home countries and not by people in exile. This is the manipulation behind. But Al Jazeera is always, when you have media support, you have something very important behind you and backing you, and it's a platform, and they know that our people watch Al Jazeera, and it's a very famous channel, and people are manipulated, and even though they know they are manipulated, they continue on watching Al Jazeera.
I noticed something very interesting. During these past couple of days, the U.S. in particular coverage of these events has been very muted, and to the extent that they gave any floor to these developments, it was the people are blaming Ennahda for the economic conditions in the country. It did not really go into these ideological discussions or the discussions of failure of governance and the corruption and connections to foreign entities, and none of that came, or the outrage about the role of foreign conglomerates that operate as a propaganda and political manipulators rather than as press. So the question is, why do you suppose there's such a um, such a huge difference in the way these events are being covered from the way the whole world was paying attention to the original Arab Spring, and there was basically a move by move reporting on everything that happened?
Yeah, I believe that Western media in general always interpret that if there is a crisis, a political crisis, there is always an economic crisis behind. And we know that Tunisia has had a big economic crisis, especially after the COVID health crisis. And we know that, following the government, two governments, they already need to get out of this crisis. Otherwise, it's a fiasco. But I think that the media don't focus on that because they don't have the real, they don't go into the real version, the real story behind, which is political turmoil and political agitation, because there are, it's a new democracy. There are different political parties. They have very, very different views, and they are put together. So at the end, you have a conflict. And when people, they are not used to democracy, they are not used to dialogue, to open dialogue, there will be a kind of violence, verbal violence and physical violence. And this is what we witnessed in the parliament lately, especially regarding women. Because women are always targeted when there are political crises. So I believe that I think that they focus on economy because it's this, the superficial interpretation of the events. It's a kind of superficial interpretation. Okay, there is an economic crisis, and that's why people went into the street. Yeah, but there is something behind. It's the same scenario 10 years ago when people went out into the street and demonstrated against the Ben Ali's regime. At that time, it was not because the economic crisis the economy was better than now, but people demonstrated against because they were fed up with the political system, with with the police system of which was very, very the regime was not democratic, and it was terrorizing people. The police was terrorizing people at that time, and they went into the streets for freedom and for dignity, for democracy. But now they went for the same reasons. It's also for democracy and freedom. Of course, economy is important. Of course, job opportunities for young people are important. But the most important thing is also freedom and human rights, also the respect of human rights.
I find that very interesting that the same media who gave full support to the kind of the Islamists taking over these revolutions and uprisings 10 years ago has now moved away from supporting the same people who found that these that these guys were not their friends and did not really provide any more freedom. And it's almost as if the media has an agenda which is not pro freedom in general, but pro political, specific political parties, countries, and positions, rather than the voice of the people as they claim to be. So that's why I found the way this is being covered, very, very fascinating. Now, my question to you is, how has the European governments and the European Parliament viewed the situation? What's the general analysis, and how are they reacting to this?
Yes, the European Parliament and the High Commissioner of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Borrell, they said that they are following the situation in Tunisia with precaution. So they are. We have seen that Germany said it's they are. They don't think that it's. Some people see it as a putsch, what we call in French coup d'état. Others, they don't see it as a push because it's constitutional and it used the Article 80 of the Constitution. However, they are following the situation because we don't know. We have to respect the Constitution, and we don't know within 30 days they should make a new parliament with the representatives, because these are people elected by the citizens. So they need to elect new representatives. They need a parliament because this is the constitution, and this is how the power was divided into the presidential, the parliamentarian, and the judiciary, etc. So the European Parliament are following the situation. Are not. I don't think that they are worried, but they are worried about the future. So they are worried that this kind of decision by the president turns into, let's say, anti-democratic, let's say, position. So that's why they are following the situation, and I believe that in the coming days there should be results, and there should be a new parliament, because otherwise the constitution is not respected.
Is there an expectation of a new election, or what is the next step?
Yeah, normally the at the time being, the objective of this action is to find out, especially people who have, let's say, previous cases, and they have problems with a relationship with terrorist organizations. They were accused of terrorism, or they have any charges. So to find out the charges against these people. But normally after 30 days, there should be a parliament. At the time being, there is no communication about that, but I believe that in the coming days, there should be new election and a new parliament, because otherwise the other scenario is going into a new parliamentary election and maybe presidential elections.
And if that were to happen, how long would that take to organize? And
it depends, because I believe that it's normally within 6 months everything should be organized, but it depends on the on the deadline that international organization would give to Tunisia, because the country is linked into international treaties, especially with FMI, with the European Parliament, etc., and it should respect these treaties, and that's why there were the elections. And that's why I think that with this government, people were so patient and they tried to give a second chance because they knew that the situation of the country is very really problematic and they should keep the government in order to keep having the international help, especially facing the coronavirus crisis. But now, I mean, in order to continue having this support and help, they absolutely need to form a new government.
So in the meantime, we've seen that the neighboring countries, we are looking at their reactions. Algeria sent Algeria's Tebboune sent a letter of support without indicating his or Algeria's position on these events. And Morocco's Foreign Minister Bourita is traveling. So what is the indication on how these two countries are affected by or view the current situation? Is there any way to read into, for instance, Algeria's reaction, or is it just a general "we'll see what happens" kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that it's not clear because they didn't mention a very specific standpoint, because both of the government, they do have Islamist parties in their government, so they try to be cautious. And see what happens within the coming days. But I know that Algeria supports a lot the president. As far as Morocco is concerned, the situation, the relationships are not very close right now. But within during the coronavirus crisis, there were so many help from Morocco, from so many countries, Algeria, so the neighboring countries. So there is always this let's say brotherhood and help between countries in the Maghreb and the Arab world, of course. But as you said, in this case, I believe that they just say wait and see, because we don't know what happens. Of course, I believe that such a decision was taken out of a lot of reflection before, and with respect to the neighboring countries and with respect to the relations with neighboring countries. But the country which might be affected by that is Libya, because they also have supporting, let's say, party to another. Yes, Libya so far didn't have any comment about the events.
That's interesting. Now, to turn a little bit to a different angle, we know that Turkey has had quite a stake in this particular government, but we also know that Erdogan had invested heavily into the businesses that are linked to the technocratic secularists in the government. In other words, he's had his hands in kind of both parts, even though ideologically he appeared to be closer to the Islamists. What happens now? Is he going to put his weight behind the secularists to kind of make sure to continue to have at least a business, if not a political stake in the country? Is there going to be a potential push to return the Islamists back to power? He's a major player there. What is the expectations from that angle?
Yeah, I saw that Turkish people, especially not Turkish people, no, the Islamists, they were, criticizing what happened in Tunisia by saying it's not democratic and it doesn't respect, it's not constitutional, doesn't respect the constitution. However, I believe that Erdogan now has other, let's say, top priority, let's say, topics in his agenda, because right now he's focused on East Mediterranean. There is a problem with the EU. So he has, and lately he completely changed his strategy by trying to be close to Egypt, by trying to appease a little bit and trying to be close to secularists. So it's very difficult to let's say to have an analysis or a provision about what Erdogan that will do in the future, because he is a very let's see, he's a calculator, and he will see what happens if he thinks that the situation would go better with the secularists. He will support the secularists. So but I believe that Islamists were really disappointed with what happened in Tunisia, because what happened in Turkey is completely the opposite. Is putting the people who criticize the Islamist government into jail, and right now lately there were the arrest of these people and the trial of these people in Turkey. So it's completely the opposite. So I believe that in this way, Tunisia gives a lesson to Turkey, I mean, to Erdogan.
And there's also a concern that the president himself, albeit not in Muslim Brotherhood supporter, is close to or supports Assad in Syria, and also has his own version of radicalism. Do you expect that to manifest itself more now that the Ennahda is out of power for the time being, and do you expect this to affect the course of events in any way?
You mean the Tunisian president?
Yes.
Yes. Actually, we don't know a lot about the political orientation of the Tunisian president. Apart from that, he is a nationalist Arab, and he likes to show that Tunisia is also an Arab country. He's nationalist, so maybe he is also following the Ba'athist party, but and he's also leftist, of course. But concerning the respect of the constitution, since he is a constitutional professor, so he normally he should know the law and respects the constitution, because he is an expert in that. Normally he should give this image of respecting the constitution. So I believe that we will see in the coming days which president is he. Is he going to look like these dictators and be obsessed with power, or is he going to be a president who listens to his people? Because at the end, people were crying and saying, "Please, Mr. President, try to fight to use Article 80. Why don't you use Article 80? We are going into the streets. We need your support." So I believe there was this kind of pressure. I don't know if he's going to listen to the people or if he's going to turn into a dictator. We don't know. So the future will tell us. But of course, I don't think that the streets or the Tunisian street is going to keep quiet if he's going to turn into a dictator.
So, in terms of the leftist movements inside the country, how are they reacting to the situation? Because on the one hand, they're generally secularists, but on the other hand, as we've seen around the world and not just in Tunisia, they also frequently align with the Islamist movements and kind of promote revolutionary, quote unquote, grassroots sort of populist sentiments. So what's happening now on that front?
I think that yes, after the revolution, the leftist movement were very popular because I mean people, they identify themselves with this movement since it calls for justice, for social justice, especially for economic justice, for equality, etc. But this is not true. Because on the contrary, most of the time, leftist movement they were close to Islamists, and they were not defending really the human rights. And most of the deputies in the parliament who belonged to leftist movement, they didn't defend what the citizens were asking for. So they were just, they were just defending Arab and international, let's say, causes, and most of the time speaking about the Palestinian cause instead of speaking about what happens in Tunisia. So it's always having this, let's say, this slogans, this mottos, just to tell people, let's defend that, and let's defend that people. But at the end, they are not really defending the people who are suffering and who are living in poverty and who are in need, and they are lacking healthcare and education and jobs. So they are living in their ivory tower. They have no link with reality. So this is what people understood at the end, is that these people, they are supposed to defend the Tunisian citizen, but they are speaking most of the time about other causes, about other issues, and they have no link with reality. They don't, they don't offer solutions to the citizen who is seeking better job opportunities, who is seeking better economic conditions, better living conditions, better hospitals, better schools. So there are no solutions, unfortunately. So these leftist and populist movements, they are just, speaking about Arab nationalism, speaking about the dream of being united with Arabs, etc. With that era of the 60s and 70s, but something which is not really compatible with 2021, with this century. We are in the era of digitization, with the fourth industrial revolution, and we are speaking about things in the 60s and 70s. So I believe that young people now, they are aware that these people cannot stand for their rights and cannot stand for their dreams and for their hopes, because they are speaking about things which have nothing to do with the reality.
And so, what is the political answer? And by the way, what's happening with the Ben Ali's former party? What role, if any, are they playing at the moment? And is there any? Have they changed their course in any way? What do you think their future is in the country?
You mean these parties, or the leftist parties?
Well, specifically Ben Ali's former party.
Yes. Yes, the problem is that these parties, as I said, they didn't have an economic plan or an economic agenda or any political program, and they have based their program only on Arab nationalism and the causes like the Palestinian cause and whatsoever. So they didn't speak, because at the end they don't have a political agenda. They don't have an economic strategy. They don't have a political plan for the future. They didn't prepare an agenda for Tunisia 2030, 2040, 2050. So this is what other countries do, is preparing the future 10 years, 20 years later. But they didn't have anything. People voted for them because they have these mottos and slogans and whatsoever, and they are manipulating people. But now they realize that they didn't do anything for the population. They didn't provide them with jobs. They didn't provide them with better health and economic conditions, with schools, etc. So the problem is that if we want a better parliament with better deputies, with better politicians, is that these people should come with an agenda, with a program, with economic, not with promises, just promises. Yeah, don't worry, we will improve the situation in the coming years. We will do that and that. But at the end, there is nothing. And young people cannot wait. They cannot wait. They have no jobs. They have no future. They have no dreams. So it's a pity, and we have so many young, let's say, academics and young doctors and engineers, and a lot of well-educated people are fleeing the country and going into other countries because they don't find jobs, and also because they don't find good conditions of work, especially for doctors, for instance. They don't have very good conditions of work in hospitals, even though the situation used to be before a very good situation and promising in the Arab world concerning education and health, thanks to Bourguiba, the first president of Tunisia. So unfortunately, the situation is going backwards, and they don't offer solutions. They don't have an agenda for the future. So I believe that coming with no economic program, with no political program, is a waste of time for the citizen and for the politicians themselves.
So, is there anybody who is currently working on that agenda? Are there any movements, parties, or individual leaders who seem to have some sort of a vision with a practical grasp on the needs of the country that we see emerging? Because I haven't, amidst all this, reactionary response to bad conditions, we haven't heard anything affirmative about who might take place of these people.
Yeah, of course, there are so many young people, and Tunisia has really good, let's say, good young leaders, very motivated young leaders, who are very inspiring, and they have a lot of ideas. But we need to give faith in these people. Unfortunately, also, as I said, it's a new democratic experience, and for the second time, there were two elections in 2014 and 2019, and in this, let's say, post-Arab Spring, and in these two elections, there were so many candidates. And the problem is that sometimes people are boycotting elections because they don't know who are going to vote for. And I believe that if we support some parties and some young leaders, it's possible to have a good let's say, a good bunch of leaders, of political leaders in the coming future. I hope so.
What should be the parties or groups or movements that we should all be following and looking at, other than the ones that have already failed or likely to stay in politics and continue causing problems? Who are the anti-leftist and anti-Islamist kind of pro economic freedom, I would say, pro political freedom groups that we should be watching from the US, Europe, and everywhere else?
Yeah, of course. There are so many political movements, and of course, what is really striking in the Arab world is that either you have leftist, or you have just a name of a political party. Maybe it's liberal, it's supporting enterprises and whatsoever. But people are always, since there was the revolution, people are always skeptical about liberal parties, or parties which support enterprises, because they are afraid that they have a category of an elite which are monopolizing the country. But unfortunately, what happens in Arab countries most of the time is we have either Islamists or leftists. So we have no choice. Between there is no third choice. But I believe that as in the Arab world, the democratic and the political experience is really, let's say, is really new. So I think that we need years of experience to come out with new political groups, new political leaders, and to be inspired by, yes, as you have said, by Europe, by the United States, by the countries. I believe that most of the time in Arab countries, they are inspired by the Russian or the Chinese model, which is leftist, but which is not democratic at all. These are authoritarian regimes, but people are inspired by this. Wow, they have made it. They are successful. Look, they are successful, but they are authoritarian, and there are no liberties, no civil liberties, no human rights. So it's better to be inspired by the West, by Europe, by America, by these examples of democracy and also of economy, because it's a free economy, is liberty, and a country that like Tunisia, it needs this free economy. The problem is not that there is no free economy, that we don't encourage in foreign investment because we are afraid that there are in foreign intervention whatsoever. We want to monopolize the market, etc. But it's better to encourage this kind of model, and this is what countries like Morocco and also Turkey did. It's encouraging liberal economy.
So it's interesting because in Morocco the model is, as you mentioned, royalist. So whatever else happens on the political level, the country is kind of unified around this particular vision, and there is a level of Moroccan specific nationalism that is separate from the pan-Arabist sentiments and so forth. Is there such a thing in Tunisia? Is there kind of a nationalist slash classical liberal leaning awakening that on the one hand sees a limitation of political foreign interference, but on the other hand, seeks to diversify the economy without it being monopolized. That's focused on Tunisian national interest and not necessarily as part of the Arab world or anything else. Is there such a thing?
Yeah, of course, of course. Actually, Tunisian people are not really nationalistic. They are proud of being Tunisian, proud of their identity, of their history, etc. But they are not nationalistic. I mean, what I mean by nationalistic, the bad way of being nationalistic,
ethnocentric
being very sticking to one side. Yes, the Tunisian people love their identity, they are proud of their identity, but they are open-minded, and they are open to the world, open to learn, open to adapt. They adapt a lot. They are very, and that's why the country through its history was really adapting with so many cultures and so many civilizations. So I think that the Tunisian can adapt and can create an environment of investment and economy. But the problem, as I said, is that there is a lot of corruption, and they don't permit that a lot of entrepreneurs and let's say the diaspora to invest and to create jobs, etc. So there is this monopolization of the economy by the corrupted let's say some political figures. So this is the problem which prevented them from participating into the economy, because there are so many, let's say, hurdles and so many obstacles towards permitting them. So if the system was flexible and it permits these young investors to create jobs and to create enterprises, I believe that there are lots of success stories that will come out of that.
I think that's great. I have just a couple last questions.
Yeah.
One is under the previous system, one of the issues was that Qatar had allegedly used certain Tunisian families and certain Tunisian areas as a pathway to Libya and to essentially fund and arm fighters in Libya. Do we expect a crackdown on something like that in the near future? Is that going to be possible, or is that going to, or do you see this current political predicament as separate from the realities on the ground? And uh, and do you think any future government will crack down on the security issues, or are they just going to try to focus on governance and let these currents continue going unabated?
Yeah, I think that they will try to find out the security issues and also to I mean to see if there are any connections, because people were very angry when they heard about this story, because they don't like any foreign interference in this affair, and especially because of the good relation between Libya and Tunisia. So they don't want really to harm the Libyans. So it's kind of going against the Libyan citizens. So it's a matter of security, and I believe that this is one of the topics and the hot topics that could be also put on the table very soon.
That's great to hear. On the other hand, the ongoing story of corruption of particular individuals in the government that we have heard some inklings from, we've mentioned kind of that it ended in scuffles inside the parliament. But what about the actual legal aspects of these legal and political aspects of these stories, the corruption related to funding by foreign regimes? Are there going to be investigations of these individuals? And what about the fact that there's been some separate incidents of radicalism in other parts of the country outside the capital? How does that tie into that? And what do we expect? What can we expect to see in the near future? And can this current period be taken advantage of by extremists?
Yeah, normally it's there will be investigations about I mean people who have connections to corruption or to terrorism whatsoever. Of course, people who have no charges, they will be free, but others who have charges and who have I mean committed some let's say crimes against especially concerning I mean the young people going to Syria into yes, and fighting with ISIS, especially this with this file. The Tunisians are very let's say very and particularly attentive to this question, because they want to know who is behind sending young people and young Tunisians to Syria. So these kind of files, I don't think that Tunisians are going to let down. They want to know the truth, and this would be very interesting to know in the coming weeks and months, because it takes a lot.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing these insights about the situation that's very much still in development. We'll certainly continue monitoring and watching closely what happens, and as the events continue to progress, we'll hopefully have other events to discuss what's going on and the future. And thank you again for coming. Thank you for
the invitation. Thank you so much
for these comments. Hopefully it will help the audiences gain an insight into what's going on beyond the very superficial headlines and occasional comments from the State Department that don't really say much. Thank you.
Thank you, Verena. Take care. See you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.